What's up, Las Vegas? We are back with the Guest List podcast. Guys, we are moving and grooving. 6,000 downloads now in little less than 5 months. So thank you guys for showing interest in the show, man. This is something that I've always dreamed of. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed. Hit that little subscribe button in the corner, as well as Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and all of your other favorite streaming platforms. And as for the show, I get to talk to I'm very fortunate to talk to another entrepreneur in Las Vegas. She is a founder of 2 separate companies and a strategy coach. She is the founder of Elevate Lifestyle Consulting Agency and a co-founder of the Directory LV, which intentionally creates opportunities for women to connect with one another, collaborate, and do business. Her name is Candice Morales, and she's appeared on numerous occasions at speaking events and guest appearances. So thank you, Candice, for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm very, very fortunate. And something that I always reiterate throughout the show about talking with entrepreneurs is that we all have this like common goal at the end, and we all have big plans, but the way that we get there, it's so topsy-turvy and up and down. Like, it's so unique. And I enjoy that so much when I talk to entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's a little messy, but I feel like that's where you get things done. You have to take messy action to start seeing some results.
Oh, I love that. The chaos is it's what fuels me. And we'll go all the way back to the beginning, so we can let the story unravel throughout our conversation. Let's go back to let's say high school Candice. What was the mindset of you? What were the important values while you're in high school, and then kind of lead that up to how you came out to Vegas?
Yeah, high school Candice, I think is not too different than Candice today. Always kind of been interested in leadership. Always kind of the make shit happen kind of attitude. Like, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm not sure how I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna figure it out. I've always just been that person. Like, I knew what I wanted to study in college. I knew what I was going to do after college. Like, I always had a plan and I always had steps, and it wasn't something that I ever questioned. Like, for me, it was like, yeah, of course I'm going to do that. So I think I still have a lot of the same attitude that I did. Maybe now with a little bit more empathy and connection to other people, hopefully now. But I was just always a goal getter, as they say sometimes, right? So always trying to make something happen.
I respect that so much. That's it's weird when we're in high school, because I kind of resonate with what you said as well. I was always kind of a go-getter, but when we're in high school, our brains are not nearly developed as they are at 25 years old, and we're kind of all over the place and still trying to find ourselves. So we find ourselves in some sort of twisted opportunities and situations, whether it comes down to partying or your college selection process or the families and friends that you get involved with. It's such a weird process along the way.
Yeah, I was lucky. I had like a really solid group of friends, and my family has always been super supportive. So I was lucky in that. And I was just like, I was not that kid that had a lot of fun. Honestly, I was just like focused. I was just like doing things. Like, I knew I had somewhere that I was trying to go. So maybe I was a little boring in high school, but I think I made up for it later.
Yeah, you never want to peak in high school. So that's the primary.
I always talk about that. Like, I feel so sad for people who are saying things like high school is the best years of my life. Like, wait, what? What's wrong there?
Yeah, that's always my fear. Sometimes when I look back on my life and I'm like, shit, have I hit my peak yet?
No.
Oh, yeah. No. So once you, I'm assuming you're probably a 4.0 student in high school.
Maybe like 3.85, something like that. Yeah, but very close. I was that kid for sure. And yeah, I went on to college. I studied child development. I knew I wanted to be an educator. I wanted to be an educator my entire life. That I get so much from like watching people have those light bulb moments. Like, that is my thing. It's still my thing, whether I was in the classroom or now as an entrepreneur. I'm like seeing the connections that people make, or seeing when someone gets the new thing that's going to help them move their business forward. And like, yes, that is what brings me joy. And so I always wanted to do that. So I studied child development.
Where'd you study at?
I studied at Cal State Fullerton in California. Like I grew up in Southern California, and then I got my master's at Loyola Marymount. I'm also studying education, and I was with Teach for America. I'm not sure if you've heard of it before, but I worked with an education nonprofit, and they placed teachers in underserved communities. And so I did that for many years, and then I ended up working for Teach for America after the classroom. So I really loved being in the classroom, but it didn't give me the freedom and flexibility that I was looking for in my life. You know, I was an educator for 7 years and I loved it, and my students are amazing. I still run into them sometimes, which is crazy. They're now friending me on LinkedIn, which makes me feel really old. My kids who I taught in middle school are being my LinkedIn friends. I'm like, oh, this is weird. But they, I think that my time in the classroom is really what inspired me to move on into entrepreneurship.
That makes sense because, as I mentioned before, on your profile it says that you're a strategy coach. And the difference between coaching and teaching is that teaching, there's a curriculum that you have to create, and then it has to be approved by whoever is above you. Whereas like coaching, you're crafting your own niche and you get to go much more in depth into their personal lives and their thinking. Whereas education, the only thing that really the administrators care about is just the grade that's on the paper. So with coaching, it's much more personalized.
Yeah. And there's so much more than that, right? Like I had some students who maybe, didn't test well, but had amazing abilities in other areas that they were never like honored for, that they were never recognized for. And that really bothered me. And now with coaching, I get to really personalize my experiences for all of my clients because I get to know who they are, what they need. And it's different for everyone, like, yes, there are some pillars that are helpful in business for people that everyone should kind of know, but also like, depending on who you are and what you actually want, like what kind of business do you want? Do you want to be the hustler that just works 24/7? Some people want that. That's not what I want, So do you want to have space and time and freedom and flexibility? Like, cool. Like, let's figure out what you want and then what works to help you get there, because it's going to be different.
So different, especially in the coaching realm. I've had on probably about 5 or 6 different coaches on now, and all of you guys, it has the same mindset that you want to help people, but they all vary in so many degrees. I've had a health coach. I just had a life balance coach. There's a mental specialist, peak performance coach. It's such a spectrum that I never knew even existed until I started talking to all you guys.
It's so funny. Like I never knew that the coaching world existed when I was an educator either. I didn't even know that. What happened is I kind of fell into it. Like some of the teachers that I was working with at one point, I was coaching teachers. And some of the teachers that I was working with were like, hey, so can you help me? Like you help me in the classroom, but with my like side yoga business hustle that I have going on, or can you like help me like you help me here with this other thing? And so I started just helping them and realizing like, oh shoot, people get paid for this. Like there's actually a whole world of people who build their careers around this kind of support. And I honestly did not know it existed until, late into my career as an educator.
I'm glad you acknowledged that there was a difference between that, and then she took those steps. And when you look back to when you first started, was there a specific moment or maybe a person that you met that kind of pushed you over the edge into branching out and doing your own business?
What started to happen, I don't think there was like a specific moment, but what started to happen was going to work got harder and harder each day. And it was crazy because, how I told you earlier that I always had a plan. Like I always knew what I wanted to do, right? Like I was a Teach for America teacher at one point, and I knew I wanted to work for Teach for America at some point. And I did, and I got the position that I'd been wanting forever. And I was like, if I do that, like I will have made it, and I did it. And it was good for 4 years. And that 5th year, things just started getting challenging. Things started getting difficult. And it was because it was that same thing where, I didn't get to choose how I was going to operate, right? I still had to operate through my organization, which I understand as an employee, but I realized that I was like done with that, like I was done watering myself down or censoring what I was going to say, or, like just being the face of something else. And I wanted to show up as myself all the time. And so it just got harder and harder to go to work. And finally, one day I was just like, okay, I'm just going to make an exit plan. So I literally wrote down in my notebook, like, I'm going to leave in 6 months. How much money do I have to save? What has to change in my life for that to be true? And like literally counted down the days. I was like, I have 40 vacation days. When am I going to take them? I have this much sick leave, whatever. I like planned all of it out, put it on a calendar. I was like, okay, out of these 6 months, I really only have to work like 4.5 months. Right? So I literally backwards planned it and said, I'm going to leave on this day. And I didn't tell anyone, they didn't tell my company, but I was like quietly making moves to be able to make that true for myself. But I wrote it down in a notebook, and that's literally how it happened. And I probably left sooner than I should have. You know, now that I'm a strategy coach. Now I help people. I'm like, oh, maybe you should be more prepared than I was. But I don't think that it would have happened any other way. You know, it just needed to happen how it happened. And I'm just grateful. And along the way, I just met people who supported me and who, you know, connected me to the right people. And it just kind of unfolded well.
It's so funny that you switched to a different kind of box where you've always like outlined where you wanted to go in your life. Yeah. Because when you start a business off, you can't outline it. It's basically you just have to take the ship and just get it into the air, and then just see the different directions that it takes along the way. Because that's I've tried to found 2 different businesses before I started the podcast, and the first one that kind of plagued me was everything had to be a specific way. Everything was like it needs to go to a T to this, but a lot of times you don't think about like the different human interactions along the way, the different people that you meet, and the sort of like luck that comes along it too. Like the applied luck is something that I believe in, where it's like you put yourself in so many different situations that the luck's going to find you, whether it's something that's blind or something that you created.
Yep. I love that idea. And it's so true. Like the thing that I tell my clients right now is like, I help people unapologetically show up and show off, right? That means you're just going to show up no matter whether you believe you're ready, no matter whether you believe that you have all the knowledge or all the experience, you're just going to keep showing up, and you're going to show off because people need to know what it is that you're good at and what you can do. And maybe you're not as good as you want to be, right? Like, there's always going to be different levels, but you can help someone that you are one step ahead of. And so I always tell people to show up and show off, and that matters. And the thing is that people don't put themselves in those situations a lot of time. So they never get that applied luck, right? Because they're so scared of going somewhere and saying like, yeah, I'm a podcast host, even though I haven't yet recorded my first podcast, but or I haven't put it out there yet, but it's happening and like, it's in the works. And to be able to just own that and say that, and without feeling like an imposter, because you know it's happening, you know you're working on it, like that's huge. And most people aren't doing that, you know, or most people are like, yeah, I only have 10 downloads, so do I even say it? It's like, yes, you absolutely say it, right? Because you're only going to get more when you keep showing up and saying the same message over and over again. So I love that idea. I've never heard of applied luck, but I like it a lot.
I'm a big proponent of philosophy. Those are some of the books that I always resonate with. It's just thinking outside the box, especially in just life. And now that a lot of the social structures in life are kind of getting broken down, whereas like people look at the mainstream media differently, people are even looking at politics differently, people are looking at business differently. So if you can set yourself ahead of them and already be able to look at things immediately in a different fashion, I think it just has so many profound results in life and life decisions that you won't make as many mistakes going forward.
I like it. I
enjoy it. And there was a question too that I wanted to ask, where you say that you unapologetically help women. Why specifically women in a coaching area? Is that an area of women that just need more assistance? Is there some sort of connection along your path and journey that associates you closer to just women more specifically?
Yeah, I feel like women specifically tend to be more, maybe like hide their strengths more than men would. Like men have no problem, my experience, showing up in boardrooms just like, yep, this is what's happening. This is what we're doing, right? And I don't know what's actually going on internally, but outwardly, you see men being able to do that really easily, and women, because I think we have more of a collaborative nature. We have more of like, I don't know, a nurturing nature. I think sometimes that, stepping into that space is really challenging for us. And I want to break that down because I think that it is something that comes up for us in different situations. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but learning how to work with your both masculine and feminine energies and be able to like show up and tell people what you do. And I think it's just so important. And I think women do it differently than men. And I feel like I understand women in that sense more than I do men, because I can connect with that, with that energy and that experience. And so I find that working with women just is more simple. And so I like to do that. It doesn't mean that I never work with male clients, but I work with male clients who are okay with reaching out to me, even though they know I specialize in working with women, right? Because if a male client is like, oh, you specialize in working with women, and they're turned off by that, we're not going to have a good working relationship anyways, right? But if a guy reaches out to me and says like, hey, I know you specialize in working with girls, but this is what's going on and I think you can help me, then we'll see if it's a good fit, right? And so I have worked with men. It's just not who I market to. It's not necessarily my ideal client, but if they find value in what I'm, showing up with, and they feel like I can help them, then absolutely I'm open to conversations. But I think that it's really about energy. For me, that's why I chose to work with women.
That's why I was so excited for Alex to connect us, because once I saw your profile and that you specialize in women, I was like, man, I need to understand more. I think in society, women are trending upwards, as equality spreads and the gender pay gap gets decreased, and all of these different like facets that have kind of suppressed women in like the business world. Now everything's coming into fruition. I think it's important that we understand what you guys are doing moving forward in terms to get to the top in all of these different positions. And so, and I always say too, that I really enjoy, I don't think I've said this on my podcast, but I actually enjoy talking to women more on the podcast than I do talking to men. So there's a little bit more of emotional intelligence there.
I think it's probably true. What I was going to say is one of the reasons that we started the directory is because there's this narrative in the world that women are like cutthroat bitches that can't stand each other, right? Like there's only room for one woman at the top, and so we have to cut everyone down so we can make it there. And I just think that's a bullshit narrative. And so we started the directory to kind of say that's not true. There's a bunch of women, especially here in Las Vegas. We love this city, and as I know you do. There's a bunch of women, especially here in Las Vegas, who are professional women who want to support one another, who want to help each other elevate their businesses, who want to connect people to resources and referrals and just be a hype girl online to some of these women, right? Like it matters. And we here in our city have a bunch of women who are willing to and want to do that and desire that. And that's why we started the directory. And I think it's really about changing the narrative about what it means to be a woman and how we connect and collaborate, and actually with that can grow further faster.
I think the directory can be huge, especially in Vegas. I try to emphasize that the women actually have the power on the Strip. I worked at a nightclub for the last 5 years. I've worked on the Strip for 10 years. A lot of the money that's generated is through the servers, the cocktail waitresses, and a bunch of like the women-centric positions. And I've seen more so recently over the last few years that a lot of these women will go and make, $100,000, wherever the case is, and then go start their own business on the side, and then kind of baby that for a few years until they can leave that position, and then they're their own founders and business leaders.
Yeah, and we have a ton of that here in Las Vegas, and I think that outside of Vegas, people don't see that, right? People don't see that that's an opportunity for women. They have one idea of what it means to be a woman here, and that's it, right? And the directory is really about changing that narrative.
Enjoy that. I know you have a co-founder, correct, on the directory?
Yep, Corey Henson. She's my co-founder. She is actually my best friend. We were both teachers. That's how we met. We were both teachers. We taught middle school history, and we became best friends. And we were transplants. We were both raised in the LA area. And so we when we first moved here, kind of had to build a whole new community, which is sometimes scary, right? You're in a new city and you don't know anyone. We didn't even know each other. We met each other in the classroom. And so we were like, how are we going to connect with more people in our community outside? Like all the people we knew were teachers. That was it. And, we eventually started having like events in our living room. We were roommates at one point. We had events in our living room and we're like, we're kind of outgrowing our living room. What do we do next? And then, the third, fourth event, like we have so many people there and we didn't know 75% of them because this person brought their friend and then they brought their friend. And we're like, it's kind of weird that we have all these strangers in our living room, right? But obviously there's something here because they want to keep coming. And so, that was really the beginning of the directory, was just kind of a dream for two friends to have more community. And it kind of evolved into, more organized way of doing that. Like you said, you can't plan every step in your business. And we didn't even know it was going to be a business at that point, right? At first we were just like, we need friends. and now it's a whole thing.
As far as like the interworkings of the directory, what kind of services do you offer outside of maybe just a few workshops or just like gatherings throughout the year?
So we're revamping some of the services that we're offering right now because we can't really gather as we want to right now. So we're working on that. But we meet once a month, essentially, and we have opportunities to learn from one another. So we have directory member academies where a directory member gets to lead something that they are good at. So, we have someone, teach us how to teach us how to do our personal finances, or someone who wants to teach us how to organize our home, or just all the different talents that people have. They get to share them. And so we do our member events once a month. And then we also do a Feature Friday, which is essentially a Facebook Live where we feature members. So we interview members, something like this, a shorter version of this. We interview members so that they get to know each other, and we really just help foster relationships between the community and create a space or a platform where they can share all the things that they have going on so that they can consistently stay connected, because when they're connected, they're going to do better.
It sounds like you can create a huge breed of business owners and even integrate two women together that maybe will go on to co-found a business together. I think that's something beautiful. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's been so many cross collaborations that have come from the directory, and Corey and I feel really proud and connected. We're like, oh my gosh, they met at the directory. Look what they're doing. Like, that's so cool. It's exactly what we want, and we've just been able to be part of that building and growing of our community. And it's been great.
And you'd mentioned too during that answer that now we're in the middle of a pandemic and society's kind of progressing in this new remote alternative working space. Yep. How do you plan to pivot the business moving forward, and kind of where do you see that direction going?
Yeah, so we're doing Zoom meetings instead of in-person meetings right now, but we're also thinking about how to help people message their brand in a way that connects with their right people. And so because you're not going to networking events like you used to, and you're not just meeting people as organically as you used to, you have to have a strong and solid message. And so we're thinking about, as services of the directory, to be able to help people show up online with a clear message that makes them feel good and confident and connects them to the right people. Because I know that our people they're all pivoting, and we want to be able to help them with that pivot and be able to create the brand that actually works online, in an online space that maybe they've never thought about before because they haven't had to. And a lot of our women are in that space where they are thinking about doing business differently, but kind of don't know how because it just wasn't part of their wheelhouse before. And so figuring out how to support them in that pivot is what we're working on right now.
Navigating the online space is so much tougher than it is in the real world, right? Like if you go into a networking event, you're there physically, you can see that person. But when you're trying to display yourself online, you have to deal with algorithms, different platforms, different mediums that people want to go through, different times. There's so much like hay in the way to navigate through.
And people are much less likely to want to show their face online, especially if they haven't had to do it before. Like they will share their service or like some kind of flyer or something like that. But that is not what's going to get someone to like emotionally want to connect and invest in you and your services. And so it's getting people to understand like how maybe posting a flyer worked before, but that's because you were also out here meeting all these people and like they already knew you, right? But if you're just getting started and you're connecting with new people, it's putting your face out there, sharing a clear message, and being consistent. So figuring out how to support women in doing that is what we're working on right now.
It's awkward when you decide that you want to be some sort of content curator and talking. Like when I started the podcast, I sat and talked into a mic for like 2 weeks in my room, and I was like, this is so awkward. Like, well, how is anyone ever going to listen to this?
You get over it, right? Like at some point you're just like, this is fun. I get to do this, you know, like I get to create content that people like, that makes people laugh or that educates them or, you know, that somehow helps build our relationship, that builds the know, like, and trust factor. So I get excited when I get to create content, but I also have to find the type of content that felt good for me because not like, I don't like to write. Like everyone was like, start a blog. I was like, it doesn't feel good. I don't want to, you know? And so figuring out the content that works for you matters. But that doesn't excuse, you still have to show your face. So if anyone's like, see, I don't have to show my face because that content doesn't work for me. No, you have to show your face.
Yeah. It's like, that's your main message is branding. Everyone's a walking brand and everyone is able to monetize off of themselves in some sort of nuanced and specific way. It's just the way that we get there is much more different now than just creating a business because brick and mortar is kind of becoming obsolete.
Yeah, it really is. And that's interesting to think about a world where that might be true, right? Where you don't go into a store anymore because they're not necessary.
Yeah, everything's delivery and everything is as a service. So and we'll talk about your business. Yours is basically some like strategy coaching as a service. And one of your newest features that I saw on there was your Instagram Reels, the little program that you're offering. Can you tell me a little bit about Instagram Reels? What are they and why you decided to focus on that?
So Instagram Reels are 15, now 30, up to 30-second videos that you can do on Instagram. And most people do them with some kind of music background. So if you're familiar with TikTok, Instagram Reels is essentially that on Instagram. And so they're fun and engaging ways to connect with people online. And brands can actually really use them to increase their reach. In the second week that I implemented Reels, I increased my reach by 396%. Incredible, right? And I wasn't even good at them. Like I'm starting to get kind of good, but I was terrible, 4 weeks ago. But I've been practicing, and in week 2, like I said, 396% reach. And I was like, okay, if I can increase my reach like this, I know it's possible for other people because I didn't even know what I was doing then. And so I realized that I wanted to be able to help people do it. And I know it's really scary because one, people are like, do I have to dance? Do I have to lip sync? Like, I'm not an entertainer. I don't know what to do, but it doesn't even have to be challenging. And I want people to get over their fear. So one, I help them with the mindset of getting over it, knowing that they can do it. 2, I help them with the technology because I know any new tech, if people are really scared, like all the buttons are there, but they still won't push them or know how, figure them out. And it takes a little time. So I'm going to help people figure that out, how to do the tech part of it. Then I'm also including a framework for planning Reels. So it doesn't have to take you forever. Like, this song, this script, this length, like, every piece of what's going to go into your reel. So you're not wasting too much time. And I give them 60 plus songs because I know they're like, I don't know which song. Like I give you all the popular songs, so and 10 different content ideas for your reels to get started. And then I just threw in a bonus Q&A day because, like I told you, I love the light bulb moment. So I do 2 days of the training, which is about an hour-ish each day. And then the third day is Q&A because I want to be able to help you specifically, like say, hey, this is my plan for my first reel. What do you think? Or I did my first reel, watch it. What do you think? Like that kind of thing, doing that. And so it's going to be really fun. It's only $99. So I want to make it accessible for people, but like $99 to increase your reach exponentially and feel confident and know how to use reels, I think is just an easy, no-brainer investment in your business.
Yeah, that's Reels is something that I've been looking into too.
Get into it.
I
It's
need
fun.
to. I hated Instagram for such a long time until I started the podcast, and I was like, I have to just give into it. I have to. I've been a Twitter guy since like 2009. I like writing and speaking, but the visual component of branding and marketing is more important than anything that words could ever portray.
Yeah. I think it all matters, right? I don't know if there's anything that's more important. It all matters, but Instagram is just such a great way to create community and actually connect to people. And it's fun, right? I always tell people there's like 3 things that your content should always do. It should entertain, engage, and educate. And if you're entertaining, engaging, and educating, people are going to love you. And so just doing that over and over again is really all you have to do. But Reels is such a fun way to do all of that.
Yeah, I think you've convinced me. I'm going to hop on it. I need to look at it.
Get on my training. You'll probably be the only guy there, but it'll be fun.
Like I said, I'm about it. And your prices are actually really cheap from a lot of, or like a lot more accepting than I've seen of other coaches and like mastermind classes and things like that can get in like the thousands of dollars.
Yeah, well, if you work with me one-on-one, it's thousands of dollars. But when I'm offering group programs, I want to make it accessible. And I want the first few things that you spend money on with me to be like really simple and accessible. And then I want you to be like, yes, that was amazing. Now, how can I get more of her in my life? And then we talk about what one-on-one coaching looks like. And that's a bigger investment, obviously. But I want to make these things accessible because it matters. People need to be able to increase their visibility online, and people need to be able to build their brands at a way that's accessible for them when they're first starting out.
And some of these programs too are important to put behind a paywall, just because not everything can be communicated through YouTube, and that's for free. A lot of people keep their secret sauce behind some sort of paywall, because that's the reason why you gained success or that you became popular, found prestige and influence.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably not anything that I'm going to keep from my free trainings. I've probably said all the things in some video somewhere that was free at one point. But the difference is when you pay to work with me, I'm actually working on your brand with you. And I'm walking through this for you, where it's not talking about it in a generic way, right? We're saying like, what's actually going to work for Jake, and like, where are you trying to go? And I'm taking into consideration every piece of who you are. Whereas everything else that I'm making is just like very general, right? It's not exactly for you. And there might be nuggets of that won't work for you. But working one-on-one is where you get that individualized support and my eyes on your business. And we actually go through what works for you. And it's just different, You cannot grow your business on freebies alone.
It's true. And not only will whoever you're coaching have a light bulb moment, but you may have a light bulb moment with them. And you're like, Absolutely. Oh my God, this is it. This is what you need.
Yep. All the time. Yeah. It happens all the time. And I love it. And it just helps, to make me an even better coach as I continue on, right? Because I learn from each experience as well.
Yeah, all of us are always growing, no matter how far along the journey you are, or even if you're at the top. Jeff Bezos is still learning every day, and that's why he remains up there.
Yep, totally.
And once you get into your one-on-one coaching, what would you say is the most common ask that a lot of your mentees are asking for, as in terms of getting better and improving their brand?
So this is funny because the most common ask is not exactly what I think I do or that they need, right? So the most common ask is, how do I connect with more people and get people to buy stuff with me online? That's the most common ask. Okay. Or like, yeah, like how do I get the sale is the most common ask. But really, the reason they're not getting the sale is different than what they believe, right? They think they need more followers. They need more followers, and they need more reach. They need more visibility, right? And those things are great, and I want you to have those too. But really, you probably need to get down into your messaging of your business, develop a brand that looks cohesive, that sounds cohesive, and that people are excited to interact with. And that is not the sexy part of business, right? The sexy part is making a sale. Like, ooh, that's fun and sexy. But that doesn't happen without all this background work. And the background work is kind of daunting and annoying. And you ask yourself the same questions 100 times, but you need to. And so I do that not so sexy work with you so that the thing can happen in the end, right? And so, yes, you're going to get more followers from working with me, but it's not going to happen the way you think it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen by really honing in on developing a message and programs and services that connect with where your people are and what they need, and showing up consistently to tell them what those things are. So the most common thing is more followers, definitely. And help them with that, but not in a direct way.
Followers is such a superficial metric in terms of like how well you're doing, because a lot of followers are bots, or people follow you with their business account that they're not always on or attached to. And there's so much fluff to it, where I've seen a lot of people actually make hundreds of thousands of dollars with not the right amount or correct, quote unquote, correct amount of followers that you'd expect. But it's because they have that direct line of communication with them. And the people who are interested in them, they may tell their friends about it who aren't on social media. And then that word of mouth travels.
It really does. And people, if you have the right people following you and you're producing quality content, they're going to like, comment, share, save. And if they're liking, commenting, sharing, and saving, then your reach is going to increase and your visibility will increase. And if they're liking you, that's the key, right? They like you. They know they can trust you for quality information. They know that you're giving them something that they need. And if you're doing that over and over again, they're definitely going to get to the point where they're curious, like, okay, what happens when I pay her? What happens when I do that first investment? Oh, I get even more. And then what happens when right? And they keep taking those baby steps. But you as the business owner need to be the one that shows up with all of that in place in the first place, right? And sometimes it's messy at first and we evolve and we figure it out, and that's okay. But the point is you just got to start. You got to start figuring out what your message is.
When you're one-on-one coaching, is there any, how do I describe this? Is there anything that you assist them with that isn't associated with online branding and online marketing?
Yeah. So we develop a plan for their business, and I take a 3-part approach to developing a year-long plan along with quarter plans for their business that they'll never talk about online, right? That's not for the online space, it's for themselves. But essentially we develop financial goals, audience growth goals, and then professional development goals, because as entrepreneurs, we still need to be, growing in our skills, just like we would if we were in corporate America. And so I, help people figure that out. So they're not trying to do all of the things at once, trying to learn everything and then feeling all over the place. And we actually track all of those metrics. So throughout the time I work with them, but they leave with a year-long plan and broken down into quarters. And most people who are starting their businesses do not have that in place, and they're not tracking their data, right? Like I loved earlier that you said, like, I have 6,000 downloads. Like, that's amazing. Like, you should know that, and how long it took you to get there, and like how you want to have 12,000 in the next 3 months, right? Like, so you're growing even more quickly. So like figuring out all of that and then deciding what were the triggers that led to that, or what was I doing or not doing that led to that? And then how can I implement more of what worked and less of what didn't, right? Or try something new. So we track all of those things as well.
I find that very fun along the entrepreneurial path is tracking different analytical data and deciding on what's good, what's not, what's actually gaining people. And so oftentimes it really surprises you. Something with the podcast I started doing recently is one of my friends was like, hey, you should focus on the titles of your show. You should, like, they're not as engaging as I see them across a lot of different platforms. And I'm like, oh, so you're saying I should do like clickbaity titles? And they're like,
100%.
And they're like, yeah. And I was like, all right, you know what? I will go with that. And then today I released an episode, and it has, it was with a mental health expert, and we talked about Kobe Bryant's death. And so I put Kobe's name in there, and it like literally exploded. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, don't be like weird about it.
Yeah.
Don't be weird about it, but titles that are benefit driven, that's huge. What is the audience going to get from this? Because people are selfish. So tell them what they're going to get from it, and then like that'll make them click. But one new metric that I started tracking, which I hadn't tracked before, which is really exciting for me, is like every time someone clicks on my website, I essentially make $2.72. So like, wow. So if I make $2.72, basically, because it just breaks it down, right? Like how many people visited, how much, money was made. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So now I do want more people to click on my website, right? If I know that, then I'm all of a sudden inspired to like, how do I get people on my website more because they are buying something, right? And that'll increase as, as different things change on my website or my offerings change. But just something like that is good to know. And I don't think that most new business owners are tracking stuff like that,
And is that a stat that you manually created on your own?
No, actually, I found it and I was like in the analytics in my Squarespace account. And I was like, oh, I don't know what this analytic means. Like, what does that mean? And I read about it and I was like, oh, that's great. I have not been tracking that. And like, I added that to something that I'm now tracking, which is just really good to know.
It really opens your mind when you see the back end of data analytics on why they call data the new oil or the new gold, and why a lot of social media companies just really seek out that data, even the small scraping amounts based off of your birthdays or what links you click on or anything like that.
I did a post last week and it didn't perform very well. And I was like, this is weird because I feel like it was quality content. And I literally just switched the cover of it. So it was like words with a graphic before. I switched the cover to my face with a little sentence and increased my reach by 25% just because my face was on it.
It's so crazy because that's something that I've slowly realized too on two different accounts. One is that for my podcast, for the cover art, it doesn't have my face on it. And they said that you get it's like 80% more subscriptions when your face is on it. But I didn't want to come off I didn't want to come off pretentious in the beginning and people be like, oh, who does this guy think he is? But
that is the thing that I help people with. Yeah. Who do you think you are? You're a podcast host who helps people share their business in Las Vegas. Like, that's amazing. You need to own that and be like, yeah. But that's really common for new business owners. Who does she think she is? She thinks she can ask me for thousands of dollars. Like, yeah, because it's going to be worth it. Watch, but helping people get over that. But yes, put your face on it for sure.
Yeah, that's in the works for the next cover art. But it's funny that it's because I think it's associated with like your confidence within yourself and this weird portrayal of when you first start a new business and you don't want to keep promoting it and you're like, oh, I don't want to bother my followers. They're going to unfollow me. But even if they do unfollow you, you realize you're like, I don't want them anyways.
They're not your follower. Yeah, they're not your ideal follower. I lost, I posted something last week and I lost like a good 30 or 40 people. It was a mass exodus. But it's okay. Like, it doesn't bother me because those are not my people. They're going to continue to not like my stuff if they didn't like that. Right. Because I'm going to continue on with that. And so you just have to be okay with that and know that the right people are following you.
And going along like the track of putting your face into things, I know I play around with the Instagram algorithm as well, and I'll just post like little clip arts of different things associated with what I'm trying to do, and it doesn't have my face, and I'll get like 50 likes, and then I'll put my face, and it gets like 120. And you're like,
oh yeah,
like Jesus, like Instagram wants me to prostitute myself, kind of.
It's not Instagram; it's the people on Instagram. It's what they want, And here's the thing: people do business with people that they know, like, and trust, and if they can't see you, how can they know, like, and trust you, right? So for personal brands, it's a little bit weird because it is your face, it is your attitude, it is your experience, it is all of those things, but putting it out there is the way that's going to help you to connect to more people.
What would you say is the most common mistake that new founders make when trying to create a new brand for themselves?
Thinking too much about themselves is the most common thing, right? Worrying about what I'm going to look like or what people are going to think, or like, oh my gosh, like my friends from high school are going to be like, what? She's a teacher. She doesn't know what she's talking about Instagram. Like all those kind of things, right? Like worrying about themselves too much, I think holds them back from actually showing up online with a message. And then not getting clear on what your brand pillars are, or what your message actually is. What's your mission? Who do you help? How do you help them? That kind of thing. And what a lot of people like to say is, I can help anyone. I can work with anyone. And that just falls flat. No one connects to that, right? But if I can say, like, I help you unapologetically show up and shop online because I know you're still worried about what your aunt in California is going to think and what your high school friends are saying about showing up online for your business. And someone's like, oh yeah, that is me. Shoot, she picked it, right? And like, that's who I want to help. So just saying even more clearly who it is that you're trying to support and who it is that you can help, get to the next level or solve the problem. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. So
first.
Yeah. So it's kind of along the process of like refining what you believe in and cutting out all the fluff along the way. Once you can kind of dig deeper into, a 6-foot hole or whatever and know where you want to plant that tree.
Yeah. I always tell people, like, what are the 3 things that you want to be known for? And are those things coming through in your social media outlets? Like, would someone be like, oh yeah, like someone should say, oh yeah, Candice will help you with your social media. That's what someone should say. Candice will help you make money as a business owner. Candice will help, support women or connect you to other people in the women community in Las Vegas. Like, those are things I want people to say about me. And I think if you go search for me on Instagram or wherever, you're going to know that about me. But that's intentional. I've created that by what I've chosen to share, right? And what I've chosen to show up with. And so you got to get to the place where you are intentional about that.
And it's a slow grind in the beginning. And then you eventually hit that exponential growth and you're like, oh my God, I made it. But
yep, absolutely. You have to stick with it and you have to try new things, analyze data, try again. It's a process.
What was your feeling like when you got that first person who signed up and you got to mentor that first person in coaching experience? Was it awkward? Did you feel any sort of imposter syndrome? Were you fully confident in yourself? What was that interaction and relationship like?
Yeah. I like the first paying client, because I did do a lot of pro bono work at first, which is pretty common, I think, for service-based entrepreneurs. I feel like for me, I didn't feel imposter syndrome then. But before that I did. And I went through like a coaching certification program because I felt like I would feel better if I had a certificate. Now I know it was like probably a waste of my money, but I needed it at the time for my own confidence or for my own, just in case someone was like, are you a certified coach? I could be like, yeah, look, I have a certification. By the way, in the last 4 years, no one's ever asked me. But so yes, there was times when I felt like an imposter for sure. But I think by the time I had paying clients, I had so much success with my previous clients that I felt like I got this. Like, I know what I'm doing. I know I can help you. And I've always gotten great feedback from my clients and they've really supported me. Like they're my first cheerleaders and my first champions who will refer me and connect me with people. So yeah, I felt really excited and good. Every time I try something new, I have a tinge of imposter syndrome. Like even with reels, like am I ready to? Yesterday, I counted how many reels I've created because I'm like, dude, did I create enough reels to like be seen as someone who knows what they're talking about with reels? So like it comes, right? Like flashes of that come, but then I'm like, yeah, like look at my data, look at what I've done. Like, of course, and I get so many comments. Like people already see me like this, but I still have moments.
Isn't it weird when you first start out with things that you always tell yourself that, this might not be the way that it should be, but there's no precise way to do anything, and people respond in so many different ways. And there's a phenomenon of, when you're public speaking or if you're doing stand-up comedy, that you're fearful of the crowd, but the crowd is actually encouraging you for the majority of the time. They're there because they want you to succeed.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
And so once you start it in the beginning, you usually get this just like pouring amount of support. Everyone's there like, yeah. And then it kind of like trickles and dies out for a little bit. But I tell people is like a support isn't always associated with a download or a view or a comment or anything like that. There's people who message me weeks down the road and they're like, oh, I've been following you and I'm really encouraged by what you're doing, but I may not have commented or listened to anything, but I'm here with you in your corner.
So that is so funny. And it's something that I rant about every 6 months I go on Instagram and rant about this, but I have multiple clients who have like sent me a DM or sent me a, Facebook message and said, hey Candice, like been watching you for a while, love all your stuff. Can we have a consultation? Like, I think I want to work with you, and have signed up and worked with me one-on-one, like my biggest packages, right? Spent the most money And I'm like, you have never liked, commented, shared, like not one time. I had no idea. Like, I know most of the people who are watching me. I know the people that I talk to over and over again on Instagram. Like, I have never had a conversation with you on Instagram, but out of nowhere, you're like, I've been watching you for the last 6 months and you're amazing. Let's work together. And I'm just like, wait, what? So even when you don't think people are watching, right? But I always say, give a girl a like, come on, like, so I make fun of, like, I have 2 clients like that, and I always make fun of them for it. And they're like, okay, but I'm working with you now. I'm like, yeah, but I'm still mad that you didn't like my stuff. And so I'm like, I hope you do better in the future. Like, give people likes, because it matters, because, you know, it helps them with their confidence and it helps them be motivated to continue to create content. It's really hard in the beginning when like 6 people like this or 3 people like this. Like, those beginning probably a few months are really, really challenging. And if you can like help someone out by saying like, yep, this helped me, thank you, that was great. Any small, tiny thing like that, I think that, you know, it's really, really helpful. And I always tell people to be the follower that you want to have. So if you want to have followers that are engaged, then you need to be an engaged follower. So when you are watching other people's stuff, make sure you say, thank you, that was cool, I really liked that. That tip was great. Share it, something like that.
It's weird, the psychology that goes behind liking and commenting and engaging in social media, because a lot of people value their likes or, you know, their credibility in different ways. Some people are like, oh, I'll like everything down there. You know, they're cool, motivating. I'll say thank you. And then other people are like, oh, I'm only going to like 5 posts for the day because whatever perception they have about themselves. So it's very fascinating in the psychology behind social media. Some people take it very greatly and are very welcoming and warming, and other people are like, oh, I can't do this, or I'm not fully committed into what they're doing yet, and I'll still follow them, but I'm not going to actively show them support until down the road.
That's true too. You do have those lurkers who are like, I don't want everyone to know that I'm on their stuff. I get that. But if you are a person who's building your online social media presence, and then I think it's really important for you to be the follower that you want to have to other people. And that, like, even you sharing other people's podcasts and things like that, like, they're going to do the same for you, and it's just all going to multiply. And so be nice.
I try to do that as well. When I first started out, I had this weird situation and mindset, and maybe you can help me with this thinking too, is I had my personal brands on Instagram and Twitter, but everyone's like, you need to create a brand account for the guest list on Twitter and on Instagram. And I was like, but if I'm speaking, then the guest list is still me. Why do I need a personal brand for it? So it was like this awkward situation for a while where I was like, what do I share on each account? Do I tweet personal things on both because I'm on both and it's just me on both? And then like on Twitter with it, I kind of only engaged with like podcast related things. And then eventually, now that I have a lot more followers, I kind of just tweet whatever I feel like. And people are much more engaging on the guest list Twitter account than on my own personal account. So
yeah, that is weird. See, those things are hard, and I don't want to give you advice without like fully knowing all of your brands, right? But for me, I want people to have a personal brand. So like, my personal brand is Elevate with Candice. That's my personal brand. And my values show through in Elevate with Candice all the time. But I do have a directory Instagram page that I need to get better at being active on. But I do have a directory Instagram page where you can just learn specifically about the directory. So I think that's important. I do think it's important that you have like a podcast page like that's all related to podcasts and your guests and hyping them up, and maybe pulling in other podcasts that are similar and cool and whatever that you're collaborating with, that kind of stuff. That I think is cool. But your personal brand, like your personal Twitter and your personal brand, I think as long as it's in alignment with who you are when you show up on your podcast, then that's great, you know? And I feel like for me, my personal brand, Elevate with Candice, like everything that I talk about there is still my same values show up in the directory. And so as long as you don't have like a personal account with like, I don't know, pictures of your grandma and your dog and stuff, like that can come through if you're pulling it back into your brand, right? If you're like, hey, I do this so I can make enough money to support my family, and like my grandma is the one that inspired me to do it. Cool, that makes sense. But just like your grandma's 87th birthday, like like, unless you're talking about something that's going to pull this together, then it doesn't make sense, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of just going through that trial and error process, and that's something that I do. Even if I see other people do it, sometimes I just have to put myself through it to understand the emotional ties that come with it as well. Because oftentimes they always say, like, you got to put yourself in other people's shoes, but it's tough because you may be in their shoes, but you're not in their head.
Yeah, totally. And that is important. And for me, usually I work with people whose ideal client is someone that they were 2 years ago, right? Like, I worked with myself 4 years ago, you know, so when I started out, kind of didn't know what they were doing and didn't have a message, you didn't have a brand look and feel and didn't have any of these things. Like, that's who I work with. But as you move on, it's hard to remember, like, oh, that was a struggle for me back then. Like, I have different struggles now, right? Like, oh, like, that little small tiny thing like really tripped me up for 6 months, you know? And so trying to remember what those challenges were so that you can speak to them and let people know that you understand that is really important. So think about maybe for you, maybe who you were previously that might be able to help you get in the shoes of like audience members. Maybe you were just a podcast listener, right? So what does a podcast listener care about or need or want from the podcast they're listening to?
Yeah, it's a weird psychological intrusive differences between everyone. But yeah. I'm always so fascinated with it, with just psychology of people and the interworkings of social media, and who knows what's next after social media, and like the different branding opportunities that transpire from that. But yeah, there's always going to be branding opportunities. And I think ads and marketing is something that is just going to prevail through time.
Yeah, definitely.
And finding your brand. So we're coming up on an hour. I love this. Literally flew by.
So fun.
I always ask 2 questions at the end. They're always the same. The first one is, the year's 2030. What does the brand of Candice Morales and Elevate and the directory look like?
So Elevate is an agency. Yep, it's an agency where you can come and get any support that you need, whether it is mindset support or branding support, social media support for your business. So there's I have a team of people who all can support you in different aspects of building your business. And the directory is worldwide. We have actually 2 new chapters coming up that are starting in the next couple months. One is in Orlando and one is in LA. So we're excited to expand the directory now that we're doing most things online. They can stay connected like that. And so we have a chapter leader in Orlando. She's actually, she works for a news station out there. She's a producer at a news station out there. Her name is Danielle Nelson, and Tia is going to be lead in LA. And so just directories worldwide, you can come and get all the support that you need to feel like you have a community of people who are behind you and support you in your business and your growth.
Wow, that is amazing. That growth is substantial. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And last question is, what does Las Vegas mean to you?
Las Vegas. I feel like Las Vegas to me means opportunity and community, both those things. I feel like I never felt this type of opportunity, and I would have been scared to start these ventures in LA because everything's just so expensive and everything is so spread out. And I just didn't feel like I had the community support that I do here. So I'd say Vegas is where anything is possible and you can make shit happen.
I'll let you know that the most common answer of women to that question is by far opportunity. By far, really? Probably 9 out of 10 women say opportunity.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, that was something I was going to mention earlier in the podcast, but I was like, shit, I don't want to blow the question because I want to know what she's going to say.
Definitely, yeah.
It's a gold mine. It's a gold mine for you guys out here. So I respect the opportunities. It's so plentiful out here, and it's only ever growing. And especially with the directory, it'll even be more plentiful.
Yep. Thank you so much.
How can all of the listeners get connected with you and your companies?
The best way to connect with me is on Instagram. So you can find me, you can DM me at the directory LV on Instagram or at Elevate with Candice on Instagram. And I answer all my DMs. It's me personally. So reach out. Don't be shy. I know sometimes I listen to other people and I'm like, they're probably too busy for me, but we're not. Just DM us. It's okay. Reach out.
So true. A lot of the people that I've messaged to get on the show literally responded instantly. You responded instantly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I know it's kind of weird at first. You're like, do I really just DM them? Like, yes, really just DM them.
We're real people. Candice, thank you so much for this opportunity. I enjoyed this so much. And it sounds like you're well on your way towards success and growing the directory as well as your personal brand and helping women all across the city connect and build their brands as well.
Thank you so much, Jake. I appreciate your time. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.